Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host and co-founder and partner in Thrive, Mr. Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian. You know, there's so many things that we take for granted in this world: our ability to breathe, our ability to be independent, our ability to do so many things, and sometimes that includes our five senses. Today is going to be a very special conversation as we hear about a phenomenal warrior and how she has faced some personal challenges and lost one of those things that we take for granted. So this is going to be a very exciting episode here on Just Two Dads. All right, welcome back. I am Brian Altunian along with Shawn Francis. I want to say hello to everybody who's catching us live on Facebook. We do this every week. Wednesday at noon Pacific on Facebook Live. If you don't catch us, first of all, if you're catching us live, hello, welcome. Please leave us some comments, questions that you have for our guest, anything that you'd like us to be talking about. Very excited about today's conversation. If you're not catching us live, but you're catching us on our YouTube channel, we are Just Two Dads. We hope that you leave comments for us there. Subscribe, tell your friends about us. And share the video, share something that you've learned today, and also give us some comments if there's something that you'd like us to cover. If there's a guest that you have a question about, we'd love to answer your questions. For those of you who are listening on podcast outlets, hello and welcome. For those down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, WSTX AM radio, we want to say hello as well. And for those catching us on Empower Media Roku channel, another episode. I think, Shawn, this is episode number 80 something or other now, right?
85 or 6. I'm not
85 or 6. We started this process about almost a year and a half ago, this podcast, but this is an extension of a conversation that Shawn and I have been having for the last 7 years, which goes to just the basic as two dads of children who have special needs, limitations, challenges, opportunities, and strengths and powers. We decided to do this podcast with and shine a spotlight on those folks that are doing amazing things out there for our overall community or the population dealing with special needs issues. But we've seen that it transcends to every community and every population. So another episode of Just Two Dads. We're excited to be here. And Shawn, I'm gonna say hello to you and then have you start introduce our very special guest. Very special to you for a whole bunch of reasons as well. But I want to say hello and see how you're feeling today. How you feeling today, bud?
I'm doing great. I'm blessed. And, I've even got a little bit of challenges that we have going on with, the kids in school and stuff like that. Some of it related to special needs and behaviors and some of it not, and just parts of life and family stuff. But again, I know that my biggest challenges, my biggest nightmares are somebody else's dreams. So I'm not going to complain. And not that these are nightmares anyway, but I want to jump right in. And I swear that this is not a matter of nepotism. What we do is we just simply try to find people whose stories we can connect with. And our guest today is someone who, like myself, hails from the U.S. Virgin Islands, the island of St. Thomas. We actually went to school together and found out while at school that we were cousins. And it's funny, I was talking to you about, you were asking, so how did you kind of connect? I had a conversation with my dad earlier and told her she was going to be on the show. He's like, how did you reconnect with her again? And it's through Facebook. And prior to Facebook, we had not actually spoken since we attended grade school, right? And this is elementary in the 70s. But through Facebook, I learned that she had some challenges, had a stroke, and as a result, lost her sight. And we were like months into the show. And I first reached out to her when we reconnected. And I was like, we need to talk. I think you really need to be on the show. And she is here today. And I just can't hold back any longer, and I want to make sure that I welcome Miss Athalie Malone. Welcome.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and good afternoon to the listening public. I am Athalie Malone. As Shawn said, I hail from the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas to be exact. But we will not forget there are 3 other islands that encompass us: St. Croix, St. John, and Water Island.
That's right. There you go. There you go. And I know that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Basically, like he said, we attended grade school. I went to All Saints and the Frederick Lutheran grade school while I was in St. Thomas. I will tell you, my childhood was, I know when people say idyllic, people look at them skeptically, but believe me, it was idyllic.
Yeah, and everybody has different situations, so it's quite possible to grow up in the Virgin Islands in the 70s and maybe not have an idyllic childhood, but most of the people we know had just that. And that's where we usually start, because we believe, Athalie, I'm sure you just look at yourself as just doing what you do. And you may not look at yourself as a hero, but as we like to say, we're here to tell you that, one, you're wrong, and two, all heroes have powers, and their superpowers come from their origin, which essentially is your childhood. So go back to that and start with that. And, that obviously, affects the way that you deal with both challenges and gifts in life. So let's go ahead and continue there.
Well, in all honesty, like I said, I grew up, it was idyllic. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was a registered nurse and the supervisor of the pediatrics ward at Nude Hanson Memorial Hospital. Grandfather was a land surveyor, a joiner, which is a cabinet maker and furniture maker. And it was just, I grew up in the church, very, like I said, idyllic. One thing I have to admit is my grandparents instilled in me from early on community, helping others, and caring about others.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
And I learned that especially from my grandmother. Even after she retired, she used to go to others and sit with them, take care of them, visited her friends. And I will tell anybody, my grandmother taught me all the things of being a lady.
Mm-hmm.
From all the arts and everything. And so, arts, sewing, crochet, knitting, cooking, everything.
And it's funny because when you grow up in that, and we're not just talking about a small town, but you're also then talking about, first of all, St. Thomas itself is 32 square miles, but then you're talking about the 70s as well. Yeah. So it's just a different time, and you take it for granted. And then when you go out into the world in this day and age, you realize that you're really sent forth with some incredible gifts of both character and culture.
Yes, most definitely. And I'll tell anybody, I miss it. That's why I love to go home. I miss my beaches. Because just about every weekend, we were on the beach.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
We lived on the beach. So it's like, I miss my beaches.
Yeah.
But
so
like
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up basically getting the foundation, the raw foundation that you need to survive in life.
Right. Absolutely.
And I left in the early 80s really, to finish high school. And I moved to San Antonio. And I'll tell anybody, that foundation is what got me through living in San Antonio, because when I first came here, I don't know if a lot of people will not realize it. We did not know anything called racism in the islands. We grew up,
and it's interesting because in the Virgin Islands, especially, it's predominantly Black. You have whites that are from there, but then you have people that come from the States on vacation, love it, and moved on there and have really planted roots. So unless there's some obvious things that are pointed out to you, I mean, it exists, but at least back then anyway. But go ahead and continue.
Yeah, we grew up with going to the school. We grew up with Jewish children, Arab children, Puerto Rican, Black, French, white.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you know there's a mix and you don't have no problems?
Right. Amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
Right.
So this is what I grew up with. So of course, when I come here and you walk into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Blew it off. And basically I blew it off. Because as far as I was concerned, because I was raised with the foundation, if you're that stupid, I'm sorry for you. I don't have time for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Very
kept
interesting.
going. I graduated from high school here. I left and went to a HBCU, Bethune-Cookman University.
Mm-hmm.
And that even gave me more of a foundation going there, because that actually, I would say, really gave the final nail to my foundation of knowing who I was and who I am. Because not only was it historically Black, but there were very many Caribbean islands that went to that school.
Okay.
So it was all together, and that put the final foundation. From there, I went home for a while, worked. There was not much work by that time, so I came back to San Antonio, and that's where my career was. I worked in corporate for a number of years, and then I moved to nonprofits.
What did you do in the corporate sector?
Corporate sector, I was in financial accounting, and basically worked pretty much with investments and so forth. I left out of there I went to nonprofits. And
now, what was the impetus for that switch?
The stress.
Oh, interesting.
The stress.
Okay. Right. Now, all this time, you're dealing with being quote unquote normal as far as health and everything goes, then, correct?
Everything was fine. I did not know. It wasn't until I got into the nonprofits that I started noticing several little hiccups, and finally went to the doctor. And because of the stress, the doctor basically told me if I had stayed, I would have had a very serious stroke. Instead, I had a minor stroke, and it affected my optic nerve.
So you're going about your day. You got these. What were some of the hiccups? The symptoms?
It was like every now and then my vision would just black out, or my whole left side would go numb.
Wow.
But I didn't pay it because it was like maybe 5-10 seconds and then back to normal.
Wow.
But it happened a little too often. And that's what sent me to the doctor.
Sure. Wow.
And that was around 2007.
Okay.
And it gradually, and that was the beginning of 2007. By the time I got to December, I had to step down from my position because it was full on effect. I had lost all vision in my right eye and limited in my left.
Wow.
And this is all from what was categorized as a quote unquote mild stroke.
Yes. A TIA. Yeah.
Would you say a TIA?
That's called a TIA. Don't ask me the full medical term.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up though because I want to know a TIA. Okay, I think I've heard it before. So
yeah, I have as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure Sean Hall put it in the chat there at some point.
Yeah.
Athalie is our producer in Hawaii. Like you, living in the islands, he's grown up in the islands, in the Hawaiian Islands, surrounded by ocean and beauty. And I grew up here in Los Angeles, so I'm only a hop, skip, and a jump from the ocean as well. So can totally relate to the upbringing and that sense of being one with nature and the size of the planet and how amazing it is to be in again in and around surrounded by water. But that I digress. I kind of jumped back to something earlier. So this is amazing. So you had a mild stroke, and by the way, doctors, did they say is it diet? Is it hereditary? Is it some sort of congenital issue?
It was a lot of it was stress. And the stress, and then the final thing was the onset of diabetes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And that's what took it far. But And once that I got to the point where I had to step down and everything was there, I then sank into myself because I became very depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at, what am I going to do now? I can't do anything. Who is going to take care of me?
Mm-hmm.
And everything else. And
You were living on your own at the time?
Yes.
Living on your own. Gotcha.
That was another thing. All that I've been through and everything else, I've always been on my own. I never married. I never had children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there going through this, going through that, going through the other.
Mm-hmm.
And finally one day, I had to get up and go to the doctor. Family here couldn't take me, whatever. So I had to make my own way.
So at this point, let me get this right. You need to get transportation from home to the doctor, and you've been depressed. You've gone through no therapy or anything like that at this point.
No.
Wow. Okay.
And I got up, walked out the door. I said, okay, I've got to get to my doctor. I know the bus goes by the doctor, and I've got to figure this out. And at the time, I did not have a white cane or anything.
Wow, that was my next question.
Yeah.
And I walked out there, and it was the scariest thing I have ever done. I got to the bus, I got to my doctor, and I sat down in his waiting room, and I bawled like a baby.
I bet.
Jeez. So you got dressed and the whole 9 yards, and then when you get to the bus stop, did you like, I'm sorry, I'm going to try and dive as deep as I can. That's why I asked you before, okay, is there anywhere we can't go? So how about before you get out the door, just getting dressed? Because,
it wasn't so bad. The dressing wasn't so bad because most of my clothes, I knew what everything was. I know, my colors are basic, so they don't mismatch or whatever. So I didn't have no problems with that.
Okay.
The thing came to me as I walked out the door, because I had walked on the sidewalk in front of the house and around. It was when I went to cross the street to get to the bus stop.
Did you ask for help?
There was nobody there. I'm in a neighborhood. Everybody's gone to work.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sitting and I'm standing and I'm trying and I'm figuring. And I got there. Luckily, there was one bus, and that bus went straight to went through town and went to my doctor's office. So I knew that was no problem. It was just getting stop. The buses announced. This is one of the things that I will give San Antonio. They were ahead of time. Their buses announced their stops.
Interesting.
Okay.
And my doctor looked at me. He said, you have got to go to the Division of Assisted Rehabilitation. He said, you've got to get training. And I'm looking at him like, I don't need no training. Why is no training? He said, you need training. And I had to come to terms with what I was going through. I went, and I will tell anybody this. There's one man at Division of Assisted Rehabilitative Services, Garrett Aguilar. He was my mobility instructor, but he was a lot more than that. Yeah, please forgive me. He kicked my ass. He said, you are too educated, too much of a person to just sit at home and not do.
Wow.
Good for him.
And
good for him.
He got me back on track.
I love it.
Did you say Garrett Aguilar?
Garrett Aguilar.
Okay, great.
It was by 2009. I got myself together. About I'll say a little more than a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I then started going to the Lighthouse for the Blind to relearn the computer, adaptive technology, get the software. And basically after that, like they say, I took off.
Wow.
Because as I was there, I started seeing different things. And I started advocating mainly for kids so they could get what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And then the former CEO, Mike Gillum, came to me and he wanted me to go with him to Austin because there was something called the Sunset Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The legislature there was looking at different programs and whatnot. And if it wasn't working, they would cut them out. And one of the programs they were getting ready to cut was Division of Assisted Rehabilitative Services for the Blind.
Wow.
For the entire state of Texas.
What?
Yeah.
Not the most progressive state, I would say. Not the most progressive state.
And
how do they, let me ask you this, Athalie, I'm sorry. How do they, if you know the answer, how do they ascertain what is and is not, quote unquote, working? What justifies?
To this day, I don't know. To this day, I do not know.
Yeah.
And we went up there and we sat down and we basically fought. And National Federation of the Blind was also there too. And we got it where we got it moved from out of their hands. It's still a state run, but it's under the Texas Workforce Commission. Which in a way makes it even better because once they finish their training and their rehabilitation, they go right into Workforce Commission and they got to find them a job. So,
Athalie, if I can ask you a question while you're the results of your medical condition at this stage is, do you have any sight at that in that moment, 2009, we're talking?
Yes, my sight was it was, let me put it this way, the right eye was fully gone, the left eye was at about maybe 50%.
50%.
But they told me, and the doctor warned me, he said, I want you to be prepared. This is why I want you to get the training, because you will go totally blind eventually.
So that was the prognosis, was total blindness, not repair, not, you're not going to regain any sight. You're going to be totally blind.
They did all that they could do to stop it for a period of time.
Yeah, slow it down. That's all they could do.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And this is where I'm at. And we, like I said, we did Sunset Commission. And from there, I just kept going, advocating, working on this, working on that, working with National Federation of the Blind, advocating for kids, getting the word out there. And then the Disability Access Office of San Antonio approached me to be on their advisory committee. I stepped onto that committee and I was there for about 3 years. And then I became chairman of that committee.
Wow.
While I'm on that committee, I noticed other things with the transit system, before that, they brought those beloved scooters to San Antonio.
Oh, the scooters. Yeah. They're everywhere. Yeah.
Those beloved scooters. And we started fussing because the disabled, those things, and they would just drop it. They would use them and drop them anywhere on the sidewalk.
That's right. That's what they do. Yeah. They don't have like a set place for them.
They still do that.
Well,
everywhere.
I went on NPR station here and we had a discussion about it. Did some other interviews with the Express News and whatnot, showing them what happened with the disabled, per se, somebody that was blind, somebody that was in a wheelchair or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 weeks after that, I was going down to City Hall for a meeting, and I flipped over one of them.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that did it.
Oh,
they
boy.
then called, they decided, the council was off and on. They decided, okay, we're going to do an RFP. And they called me to be on the RFP.
Which is?
Request for proposals, usually.
Yeah, request for proposals, yeah. Mm-hmm. And everybody had to turn in, because we had something like 8 to 10 of these scooter companies down here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
And we took it down. We had requests for proposals, and we chose the top 3, and they were under restrictions and rules and regulations. And I was on that committee to choose them. We turned it into city council, and we went from there. That was back in 2018.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm trying to get on the board of the Metropolitan transit system. Because there were several things with the paratransit and the bus. They were good, but they needed fine-tuning. Mm-hmm. And here and there, and certain things, and how they address the disabled, how they address the elderly, and different stuff. I went back and forth. It was a long time trying to get on there.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, after I come back from burying my mother, because she had passed in 2019, I said, I'm going to try it one more time. And they pulled me in. They elected me to go on to this board. I have been on that board since. And within that time, we have brought in a lot of new things that are advantageous for the disabled and other people. We are getting ready to roll out. They've been testing it. We're just waiting for the money to come through for a app called Navitel. Navitel, yeah. Mm-hmm. It is an app that came from Europe. It was made for the blind. You download it on your phone. It's a GPS system, and you can tell it what bus stop you want to go to, where you want to pick up the bus at, the streets and everything. And the GPS will talk to you, guide you to it. When you get to about 40 feet away from a bus stop, you can hold it up. You don't have to be exact. You can hold your phone up, and it will read the QR code and tell you if that is the bus stop that you need to be at.
Huh.
Wow.
And it does it in 40 languages.
Wow. That's amazing.
So it's not only good for the blind, it's also good for tourists from other countries or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew some folks in the transportation world that were trying to create apps and stuff that would make things easier. How you get an Uber, a cab, a car, a bike, a scooter, and all those things. And the challenge usually in those cases is that the municipality, has so certain control over some aspects of the transportation, then not control over some other aspects, and it's sort of a mishmash of private and public entities trying to get together, and it nearly impossible. So what you were able to do as being a member of the community that it's serving is you're advocating for for some major change. And so is that implemented now in San Antonio? Is that part of the
they rolled it out, and now we were just waiting for money to come through so we could put it on all the bus stops.
Nice.
That's great. Now, all this time, because you've gone from the corporate sector to the nonprofit, and then you're advocating and everything, so what did between there and now, as far as the bridge goes, what did you then do for work? Is that, what your profession has been, as opposed to just your cause?
Well, when I went through the training, I was training for to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, you know, let us be very honest, that's a very hard world for somebody going back into the corporate or any kind of whatever, trying to get work that is blind.
Right.
And
Sure.
I did it. I did several interviews. I did a lot of stuff. They can't say they turned me down because I was blind, because that's discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
But you can kind of tell it.
Tell us
Just
what that was. Tell us what that's like. Because you know, when you go someplace, you know the difference between not taking responsibility for yourself and being like, well, they didn't give it to me because so and so. You know the difference between that,
yes,
and when it's really because of something that isn't about you, when you're a member of any marginalized community. So tell us kind of what that conversation was like, where you could sense that.
Well, in terms of interviewing, you know, you ask the questions, your qualifications, whatever, and so forth. And a number of times I would get the question, well, especially when it came to computers and whatnot, and I would have to explain to them, yes, the software is expensive, but if I am hired, Division of Assisted Rehabilitative Services will provide the software and install it for your company so that I can do the job that I'm required to do.
There you go.
When it comes to filing and so forth, you know, yes, there are things that I can do to file. There are certain tactile surfaces that I can use to find the files and everything else. And it's well, okay, yeah, we can understand that. And a lot of times too, it would come up, well, what kind of assurance do we need to carry in case of anything with you being blind? That's not a question you asked.
I don't even know what the answer would be. Like, are you going to combust because you're blind or something like that? What is that? What kind of question is that?
Yeah, you see, they would coach things in certain ways, and you know what's going on.
What they meant. Yeah.
So eventually, I got tired of it. I went ahead and filed for disability, and I started advocating. I basically had savings. I had, you know, a 401k and whatnot. So it's supplemented, still supplementing to a point. You know, I've learned how, and you know, coming from the islands, as we say at home, we know how to suck salt.
That's right. Do without and make it work.
Yes. Okay.
That's right.
So this is what I have done. And I have to admit, my life is no different than if I was at home, if I was working or whatever. It is no different. You know, yeah, there have been some hard times and whatever, and now it's definitely hard times with all this inflation and everything else. But I don't let it stop me. I keep going. And this is what I do. I have been on the board since I said like 2019. I have worked with them. We were the most underfunded transit system in the state of Texas, and we had the most miles. We have gotten. We went for a percentage that we were not given, and the voters voted it in back in 2020. So we're starting to really come up. And then we are starting a rapid transit program. I should say program. We set for rapid transit in one section of the city. And we are in development for it. We have applied to the FTA. They have given us the go-ahead. We got money for that. So this is where we're at.
Wow.
And it's still a volunteer position on the board. It's a volunteer position on the board.
Volunteer position, yes.
Wow. Look at you.
And like I said, the board sets the policy. They back up the transit system. You know, and we work with them. And since I've been on that board, number of times they've come to me, Miss Malone, this is this. How would the blind or whatever do this? Okay, bring me the app, and I work with them, IT
That's
and everything
great that
else.
they asked that. Good.
Yeah, they do very well. And in all honesty, I will tell anybody, I was on a stretch. I was on not coasting, but doing what I was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And then in December, I got hit again.
Yeah, you tell everybody about that. But well, let me ask you, two things. Are you at this stage? Do you have any? Do you still have that 50% in the one eye in terms of your vision?
It is now about, I'll say about 35%.
Okay.
About 35%.
So this speaks to, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. If you're listening, I want you to think of what's taken place so far, and you would think at this point you've already heard a story about adversity turning it into triumph and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of adversity, these are back rubs and massages compared to the punch that Athalie's about to share, because I reached out to her in December to talk to her about being on the show, and I'll let you continue from there.
I basically, diabetes, you take care of your health, you take care of everything. Well, unfortunately, one of my doctors didn't do what he was supposed to do when it came to foot care. And I had a puncture wound. It got infected. And it got infected very badly. I ended up in the hospital. And the prognosis was that they were going to have to take my leg up to the knee.
Wow.
They did, and I can tell you, it took me, it floored me. I went in the hospital on December 20th. And they did what they had to do and whatever.
Tell them when your birthday is.
December 28th. And on December 28th, I went into operation, and they didn't take my leg up. They didn't take it up to the knee. They just took the toes.
Wow.
They just took the toes, and they did it on my birthday.
But I called her. It was like a week after I saw on Facebook her birthday. I was like, oh, it's her birthday. Let me wish her happy birthday. I didn't talk to her about being on the show. And the same way you hear her speaking now, as a matter of fact, she's like, oh, yeah. How you doing? I'm good. I was in the hospital for Christmas. Hospital? Oh, man, are you back home? She, oh, no. I'm in the bed right now. I had to have my toes amputated. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. She's like, yeah, I'm sitting there right now. 5 less toes. Just chilling out. How you doing? And I'm like, what? Okay.
Not an everyday conversation, I guess. Yeah.
No. And I got off the phone trying to strike a balance between, wow, check you out. You sound great. How much of that is an act that she's putting on for herself as much as for me? And again, no pun intended here, but that's why I always talk about, we need to get curious about other people's shoes. What is it like to step into somebody else's experience, man?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is this. In all that I went through, there was one abiding thing in my life, and I take it all the way back to my grandmother. She was in her church and in her faith, and she taught me that. And I basically kind of forgot it when I got hit in 2007 with my sight. But this time around, it was there. And all I did was I said, I'm going to put it in the hand of God. And I got to keep on going. I got too much to do.
Wow.
And I have kept going. I had one or two other setbacks, with it, but I am basically better. I still have one or two more sessions with my doctor,
Mhm.
and then I'll be fully healed, but it's not stopping me. I got out January 13th. I had some other problems, and that had to be taken care of. But since that went down, I have been back. I was elected board secretary for the VIA board.
Mhm.
So I serve as the board secretary for this year.
Right. Right.
I am basically now getting ready to talk to a lot of council members within San Antonio about some
Mhm.
other things. And I am, for the last 9 years, I have been the co-chair for the White Cane Awareness Day.
Tell me,
Which,
tell us about the White Cane Awareness Day, because I did not learn about that until our conversation earlier today.
well, that was something that was presented back in 1964
Mhm.
to to Congress, and
Okay.
Congress signed a resolution for it to be made a day of remembrance each year,
Mhm.
and Lyndon B. Johnson signed off on it. And this will be the 58th year, October 15th,
Mhm.
and all over the US, all 50, and in Europe, they hold White Cane Awareness Day. And what it is about knowing what the white cane is, why we use it, our independence, and mainly and definitely our independence.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
still to this day, you have people that try to hold us back.
I was going to ask you about that too, because as we were trying to figure out a date, once you were in the hospital, and I tell you this, Brian, Athalie told me at one point, she goes, so we picked a certain day. She goes, I might not be out by then, but I could have my laptop and we can do the interview from the hospital bed if it comes to that. And then she said, well, I had a setback because you had to learn how to essentially walk with
Yes.
those toes gone, right? So you're
Yes.
still learning to do that, right?
Yeah, I'm basically on the cane now, and they're gonna get a prosthetic for me.
Okay.
That's what I'm going through. That's what I'm going through. Yeah.
That's what you're going through now. Okay. So for those of us that are parents, period, neurotypical or otherwise, one of the greatest challenges that a parent has is trying to strike a balance between giving your kid fish and teaching them to fish. When you add a special needs component, a disability, a catastrophic injury, or anything like that, the balancing act gets twice as difficult because you want badly to do both. So what can you say as someone who mentors those that are new to loss of sight and things like that and help with the independence? What can you say to parents of children in a similar situation that is probably the greatest help based on your experience trying to help these children find their way?
All I can tell them is yes. Because you love them, you want to protect them. And the greatest thing a child can learn is to fall, is to be bruised, because then they pick themselves up and they learn from that.
Yeah.
Perfect example. And we talked about this, Shawn. I'm in middle school. Not only was I teased, I was bullied. And back then, you didn't have mothers running to take care of their children and, oh, we can't do this and we can't. No, we cannot do. Suck it up. And you keep going.
Right. Now, granted, it's a different time because now the way the way things take place now,
Yeah,
bullying has gone to another extreme. But
it's gone to
yes,
another.
yes,
It's gone to another level. But
yeah.
in terms of that, I had to learn how to deal with that and keep on going.
Mhm.
So yes, you may want to protect them, but let them fall.
Yeah.
Let them fall. Because when they pick themselves up, they learn from that.
Yeah. There's a great book out called The Blessing of a Skinned Knee that is sort of in the Jewish Jewish families, how they raise self-reliant children, exactly what you're talking about. How to teach your kids to be self-reliant
Yes.
and independent.
I
You
mean,
got to let them fall.
Yeah,
Scrape their
it's
knees.
very difficult, especially when it comes to the special need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if you don't let them fall, how are they going to learn when
Yeah.
you're not there later on?
Which is inevitable.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So, Athalie, this is amazing. I mean, it's so funny. We talk about this all the time, just in the matter of a regular course of a day. How many people allow certain obstacles to just shut them down? Somebody rejects them, or somebody has something to offer, and the response is no, I'm not interested. And like, and then they let themselves be shut down by an objection or by a question sometimes, and the idea that, looking at your example is sort of like, I almost want to tell people, like, look at what you've been dealing with, your own personal issues. You lost your mother, having to go to surgery just a couple of months ago. And your perspective is like, getting up and what do I got to tackle next? What's the next thing to take? What's the next hill to take? And it's just inspirational to see that you have not let the adversities of your circumstance stop you from not only accomplishing great things for yourself, but you're standing for other people. Like you're fighting for the value of other folks as well. I mean, it's absolutely incredible to listen and to talk to you, because again, it's just inspirational. It's just inspirational.
Yeah. And I think that we talk about, we used to say, this is about evolution, right? Us as people. And we began the show at some point along the way. We started saying, there is no such thing as special needs, because everyone has the same needs. Everyone needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to know that they're loved and that they matter and everything. It's just that if you have a diagnosis or a catastrophic injury or something like that, you may need accommodations. But, in that thought, there's so much of a lesson in looking at what you've dealt with, because what happens is a person who is less equipped to overcome their challenges, would not be able to deal with something like that. And most people, quite frankly, will not have to. So if you're, again, going back to my comment earlier about one's nightmares being somebody else's, dreams, if the problems that you're facing are not, that life altering, make the most out of everything that you have. And this is, I'm trying to say that, to our audience, because, it's like, everything is temporary. With the exception of love and our legacy, everything is temporary. So make the most out of the time that we have here, which is something that we just need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most definitely.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of change, Shawn, this is right about that time, right? Where you want to ask.
Yes, it sure is. It sure is. Yes. At this point in the show, we ask our guests, our ability to change the world and make it a better place is tied greatly, at least in part, to our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. So if you could give us one example, Athalie, of a thought or belief that you believed very strongly once upon a time, but no longer believed to be true.
In all honesty, I would have to say, and I know it sounds harsh, I always believe that if you had friends, and I mean a whole lot of friends, your
Mhm.
life would be so much better.
That's what you used to believe.
I used to believe. I have
Mm.
learned along the ways
Mhm.
that is not so.
Mm.
You, and I'm not saying you don't have friends,
Right.
but you have, I don't call them friends. I call them warriors of your heart
Mm.
Mhm.
because they stand for you.
And what you and let me understand, see if I understand you correctly. What you is it safe to say that what you identified as a lot of friends, probably when you were younger, is more like a lot of acquaintances, and as a result, you see greater value in few real friends slash warriors than a bunch of friends that are truly acquaintances.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
put it this way. I have really said now, I'm at the point now where I can count on one hand
Mm-hmm.
the number of friends, warriors
Mm-hmm.
that I have.
Right. Right. Right.
Because those are the people that are going to step up for you
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, they're going to be there for you.
Right. Right. And that's the other thing too. Without adversity, you don't really know who your friends are. Everybody's your friend when the sun is shining. Woohoo! Everybody's having a good time.
Oh,
Yeah. Everybody's your friend when the sun is shining. When it drizzles, a couple of them get filtered out. But when it begins to really pour, that's when you know who shows up with an umbrella in your life, and you know who your friends really, really, truly are. So
yes.
again, that's the benefit. So anything that comes our way, the question to ask is not why me, but okay, get to a point. Sometimes depending on the challenge, it might take a while to get there, but get to the point where you can at least ask, okay, what is the benefit of this? Because it's always there. Every adversity, as the great Napoleon Hill said in his classic Think and Grow Rich, every adversity has with it a seed of equal or greater value. If, and in this case, if is a 50-letter word, if we look for it. The problem is, part of the human experience, we're conditioned to not look for it because we're too busy looking at what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Most
sure.
definitely.
Most definitely.
Well, this is it's been lovely meeting you and hearing your story, and again inspired by what you're doing, Athalie. I just think again for our listeners and for our viewers to just have a chance to again, as Shawn would say, step in your shoes. It goes how we close out our program every week is I say the same thing, and so this fits in so perfectly with how I generally end the show, which is talking about empathy and love. Empathy and love, we need to be more empathetic and understand people's story and their situation and what they've gone through to, and have some empathy, and have no idea what somebody else has been through, what they're going through, what they've gone through. And if we look at the world through the lenses of love, the world is just a better place. And so what a great opportunity for the two of you as family, really as family, to get back together in communication. How awesome! Great for me to sort of sit as witness, to the reuniting of the two of you, and you being able to share your story, and knowing that you're fighting for others, and that you're advocating for so many changes in a system that definitely in 2022, our transportation system and how it all goes together: cars, buses, vehicles, bikes, scooters, whatever it is, how we all live in cities where there's constant movement, and the fact that there are folks like you that are making sure that those that have, that need the extra accommodation are getting taken care of. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I love that you're fighting for so many people. And so again, I just want to thank you. I've really appreciated the time that you've spent with us. And Shawn, I'm going to throw it to you to thank Athalie and then close us out as well.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. It's just been a pleasure and delight. I expected it to be, but it exceeded that. And I will say something I don't usually say, which I got to thinking about is, because everything we do here is about changing the perspective just a little bit, trying to be more childlike and less childish, ask questions, make less judgment. If you know anybody that is either serving the special needs community, has overcome adversity, or is just someone that you think the world should know that can help people add value to their day, feel free to let us know so we can get in touch with them so that we can have them here so that people can know. And with that, I want to make sure that I thank the women in my life without whom I could not be. And that is my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. Everyone within the sound of my voice. Just remember that somebody needs to be seen. People need to be heard. People need to know that they are valued. Everything, remember, everything, and I say it again, everything, with the exception of love and legacy, is temporary. So I want to thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Athalie, although we're signing off, don't go anywhere. And everyone within the sound of my voice, thank you so much. And if you're watching or hearing, wherever you are, we love you.
I love you. Thank you.